Wendy.
Hey, Maureen.
Welcome, and thank you so much for coming and meeting with me and talking about your practice. You are our first interviewee on this channel. Yay!
Thank you.
And this is our opportunity to talk about what we do, our somatic work, our somatic experiencing work, interrelationship focusing work. And I know that you, in your practice, do many of these practices. So maybe you could tell me some about your practice and what you do.
So, I primarily work with individuals who are seeking trauma resolution for two things mostly: relational trauma and systems trauma.
Hmm.
So, the relational is like your garden variety developmental trauma, complex PTSD. But then the systems trauma, with my background in marriage and family therapy and cult recovery and my own personal journey coming out of a high demand religion, my work really can support people who, had a maybe extremely dysfunctional family system, or they came out of a cultic religion or really intense religion that had a lot of demands on them as a young child or it could be an adult. But even corporate systems, right? People in high demand professions, and then cults, either a group or religion. And then I have a specialty that I'm developing now just because I realize a lot of my clients are highly sensitive people,
Hmm.
whether they identify that way or not. They just, a lot of sensory overwhelm or even relational overwhelm. And just myself, because I realize that I have this sensitivity, I consider it a gift, but I educate my clients about self-care practices, living into their boundaries, and how important having a secure attachment, even if it's just with yourself, for your parts, can be.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly and an incredibly important specialization. And I'm wondering about how what's the relationship between doing somatic work, working with highly sensitive people, working with these particular kind of systems traumas that you work with. How do you see all of this coming together?
Yeah, so I'm I'm combining SE and IRF primarily through doing the work on my own system, right? With the peer-to-peer or professional-to-professional partnerships. And because I've that guides my work is understanding my own system. So how I bring it together is I, consider people's attachments, first of all. So whether or not their early attachments were met. Um, and I try to be a real person in the room for them to feel, safe enough. So that's first. And my early training in psychoanalysis really, gave me that foundation of really getting that we need to have enough support of a
Yeah.
co-regulating nervous system. They didn't use those words. I'm getting that from SE and IRF. Um, so being authentic, even using sense of humor, and then I educate people about really what it involves, right? Which is finding the space inside. And
Yeah.
sometimes, or often, that means living into our boundaries so that
Mm.
we can sense into the space inside. So I have this thing I came up with, which is the four no's,
Uh-huh.
living into one's boundaries. This is especially important for people who have, had a system or, family or parent who were dominating them,
Uh-huh.
like kind of the do or done to dynamic. So I educate them that you don't have to have the ability right away or even ever to do no, like be able to quit your job, right? Or tell someone, I don't like you, or I don't like what you're doing to me, because that can be overwhelming, especially for those of us who are deeply sensitive. So I bring in these tools in addition to IRF and SE, like telling people, you can just notice, like track when you feel no. That's a boundary.
Hmm. Yes.
You can think no. So those
Uh-huh.
are two no's. And then if you have the ability to do no, like get off the phone, do an action, or walk away from a situation that feels overwhelming in whatever way, you can. And then the last one is saying no.
Uh-huh.
Because sometimes we don't have the words. But
Mm-hmm.
I first, um, I educate them that the no is on the inside. And so just helping them track through SE and IRF principles of their own embodiment as an adult, noticing, oh, yeah, I didn't like that as a kid. I felt no, it wasn't safe to do it. Now it still feels threatening to my body to consider
Yeah.
living into a boundary, but I can just notice that I'm thinking, I want to run out of here right now.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you're helping them first just to feel it. And that it's like a titration or just oh, you can feel your no.
Yeah.
Or you can think your no. You can do your no. And what's the last one?
Say, and
Say.
say your no. Sometimes it's the hardest one to find the right words.
Yeah. And so that's great that you're helping people recognize that boundaries come in different, sizes and varieties, and that it's a huge achievement just to feel that no, just to feel something in you that's saying, I don't like this,
That's right.
and acknowledging that to yourself, like feeling it inside and acknowledging it.
It reminds me of the empowered focuser in IRF that we try to support our clients to achieve in themselves, like being able to say to your practice partner or to your focusing oriented therapist, actually, I don't want to do whatever, right? Or
Yeah.
that part doesn't want our attention right now. It doesn't want us to
Yeah.
give it any contact. Great. We don't have to. No demands is also a huge part of the way I work now that has been transformative for me and my clients, which I learned from somatically informed IRF.
Yeah, that's lovely, right? Of like the real recognizing inside it, like a felt sense of a preference. I don't like that, or I like that, or that feels good, or that feels bad. And that's really, putting me in mind of what you started with, of sort of like high demand religions, high demand parenting, or the situations you grew up with, and how that can impact people into either not even knowing an internal no, or trying not to feel their internal no because it wasn't welcome or it wasn't acceptable to have an internal no, and that how that can result in a kind of a something that it could either look like compliance or feel like compliance inside. And here you're helping people to recognize there's all different versions of recognizing I'm different from you, or I'm different from what's being asked of me, or I want to do this, I don't want to do this. Like you're helping people to really get where they differ from what's expected of them or what's being asked of them.
That's right. Yeah, and to kind of what you brought up, help them to notice when they're fawning or complying without thinking about it, and just slowing down enough, which is what we try to do, right, in somatic work,
Yeah.
to allow them to feel into their no and notice, oh yeah, the other day I really wanted to tell that person off. Not that I recommend that people do that, right?
Yeah.
But just to get them into their healthy aggression, which I also really learned about in a practical way through SE.
Yeah.
Specifically, I learned about, healthy aggression a long time ago in psychoanalysis, and even marriage and family therapy stuff, training. But what SE and IRF affords is the step-by-step roadmap or tools. Like I feel like now I have practical tools, whereas before I was told, just reparent your clients, just
Right.
be the
Yeah.
empathically attuned therapist. And that got me so far, over a couple of decades in this work. But in the last handful of years, really studying these two modalities and practicing them myself weekly almost, because of the partnerships that are provided. I really feel indebted to you for, making those assignments all those years in those classes that I took from you in IRF, because now I have, first of all, priceless friendships, but
Mhm.
second of all, this support on the inside
Yeah.
so that I'm able to be that embodied presence. And I have the confidence now that all of my clients, the answers to their tangles inside of them
Yeah.
are within them. And my job is just to be self in presence as
Mhm.
they, find their own self in presence and their own inner wisdom, which will guide them.
Absolutely. That's really lovely. Both the finding it within your own partnerships, and also it sounds like just feeling like, as I had this in my training too, of like, oh, things are just naturally going to happen in your relationship, and people are going to develop into having healthy aggression and a healthy view of themselves. And it's like, I'm not sure that happens. Or sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. And here, I could really hear it's like feeling like you have a roadmap and you have support. And it's a specific kind of support of how to turn towards, how to be with the things that are arising within you that you can then also offer to another person. And you get that really reliably allows someone to feel themselves. And feeling themselves allows them to know their preferences, which then becomes, oh, this is who I know something about who I am, and I know something about how I feel and think and how I want to act. And all of it starts to come together into greater confidence, a greater certainty of who you are and how you want to act in the world that's really authentically you. And you've had that for yourself, and you also support it in your clients in a way that sounds like feels more comfortable and confident and real.
Yeah, and something I wanted to really highlight here, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity because those of us who have been in systems or families where we were done to a lot, we were the doer, there was a done to, like undue influence, or like there wasn't consent, right, for our bodies or, our interests, what we wanted or didn't want, it wasn't available.
Mm.
I find this partnership practice that the SIRF Academy provides, and other things like the certification training, which I'm currently in, it is, I think, uniquely healing for those of us who are trying to heal from pathological hierarchies
Mm.
because it's mutual.
Yeah.
So even sometimes a therapist that might have an agenda for us, and
Yeah.
ideally focusing oriented therapists don't, right? That's the goal. But that shift for me and my system, and then I'm finding for my clients who have all come from these kinds of systems or family systems, is so healing because it's non-hierarchical.
Yeah.
Ideally, right? Whether, and if it's in the classes, you get assigned peers or, professional to professional. But either way, whether it's with a therapist or a partner, like a friend or anybody, the fact that, nobody is saying, I know what's going to heal you. And even is like, we don't have to do anything right now.
Yep.
Like you just being with in an embodied way what is healing, and feeling this twinship of the person across from you that's like, yeah, like we don't have to do anything, and the parts that don't have to do anything, we're just going to accept everything with like this radical compassion and acceptance. It's transformative. It's changed my life. It's that kind of support that's
Yes.
unique to these modalities.
No, thanks for saying that. I mean, it is incredibly important. It's like this deep mutuality, and no one feeling in any way that they know something that's right for you, really deeply respecting you and your partner both want to support that to come from you, for that to just emerge and unfold and clarify for you. And I can imagine that if you've never had that, which I also never had that, just coming from a deeply Irish Catholic background, which also has its own hierarchies, etc., of like, never got that respect. And so it is also healing coming from that sort of tradition. I can hear you saying like when someone's coming from a, forget how you described it, like a deeply hierarchical, like
Mhm.
a pathologically hierarchical structure where you're always done to, you're always even told who you are. Here it is of like, let that unfold from you. And I'm here, I'm curious, I'm interested, I'm wanting to see, we're wanting to birth the baby.
That's right.
Like what's gonna come forward here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just lovely. In fact, I'm thinking of someone I saw today who really has a lot of tangles in my practice. She, like all of us, we have our tangles, right?
Yep.
And her tangles, we've been working for years. And before I, started learning and utilizing for myself, SE and IRF, I think I was following her too closely, her system.
Mm,
So this concept of distant versus close processing
yeah.
transformed the treatment. And, she's still in process. We're still working on her wanting and not wanting parts,
Yeah.
but now she's sensing, these parts like peeking out of the closet, so to speak. And whereas before there wasn't trust that it was safe to come out. And I think my understanding that she is a distant processor due to her early experiences, she went far away and her parts went far away and where they could feel safe.
Yeah.
And now, as I literally and figuratively sit back and
Mm-hmm.
I say to her, yeah, there's no demands here, no
Yep.
agenda. Just, it took a few months, but a year later now, after I got that consultation actually from you in an IRF group consult class, she'll still start out the session saying, I don't want to be here. And then as I remind her, no demands, and literally I do less, but I just feel into my own body more, try to be self in presence. Um, she starts saying, oh, I'm rambling. I'm aware I'm rambling. I mean, the parts are just coming out and sometimes she says, there's a lot of parts. This is overwhelming. And I say, yeah. And that makes sense because they've all been separated. And, with time, she's so much more relaxed to the point that she's dressing differently for session, like
Wow.
comfortable clothes. And she's something in her has a comment about that, right? But now whereas she's deeply longed for a relationship, she's on a dating app.
Uh-huh.
And she's even able to say through the IRF framework, because, I've been able to offer for her, maybe there's something worried here.
Yeah.
She was able to say, yeah, they're scared
Yeah.
that, they're scared about being close to people.
Mm.
And so it's just unfolding. The work is unfolding and it feels less challenging in every way. And I feel more confidence
Yeah. That's
that the work is
beautiful.
happening.
Because it sounds like she has a really big part of her that, comes in and starts the session with, I don't want to be here. And that is, that's one of the ways she feels. And it sounds like when you're just spacious about it and you just allow that big part, which is almost like it's the entryway part. I don't want to be here. But it's not the only part that's there. It's just the one that speaks first and the one she feels first. And it's really big and it, needs her attention and your attention. And then once it's like, okay, so that's here, that there can be room for other parts of her too. And it sounds like they emerge. And now you're really even seeing a shift in the balance of her parts, which allows other parts of her to be felt more strongly and acted from. Not just the I don't want to be here part, but more parts are getting more airtime, or more of her embodied presence and her actions,
Yeah.
which is great. So I'll just ask you, and even though we're already talking about it, are there ways that you experience yourself and your practice differently now that you've learned somatic interrelationship focusing?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about my journey is that I was raised in high demand or cultic religion. And I was in a big family where I had lots of responsibility. In fact, looking back now, I'm like, oh, I was kind of working and held to the standard of an adult now that, I have children of my own and reflecting on it. And for a long time, I was going to my own therapy. And not that there weren't shifts, there were shifts, especially over time and with consistency and the right, the kind of just right therapist for me. But after 20 years of working on my system, there still wasn't this ability to feel joy all the time on the inside when I worked so hard to create the life I wanted for myself on the outside. And again, so I think these regular practice partnerships and with the consistent support, really, support has been key. And it's the support for my body that was the missing piece. And people, being trained, and even if it's my partners and I, where we're learning together how to kind of, not kind of, but be an embodied and an attuned nervous system, but with nothing to do except to just follow, what's happening on the inside and then helping me come in back into my body. Because I think we're all born in our bodies, like really feeling our sensations and having movement. Babies, they
Yeah.
vocalize, they move, they cry, they, you know, all everything is in flow. And so as I've found through these partnerships and with somatic experiencing work and support for my body work in particular, I've found this ability to just be who I am
Mm.
moment to moment. This compassion for myself that, of course, from my early environment, I had a strong inner critic. There wasn't a lot of compassion that just came naturally, or even the ability to track, oh, I've had a long day. Maybe I should
Uh-huh.
take a break.
Yeah.
Or, oh, there's a part that's really working really hard all the time. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just take a break and notice, oh, it still has an idea of all the things, the to-dos and what's going to happen if the to-dos don't happen. And then kind of noticing there's space between me and it.
Yeah.
And so bringing that to my work, that with the right support, people really can kind of come home to themselves
Yeah.
and however they feel is okay. Like, even if they're quote unquote highly sensitive, which sometimes sounds pejorative, but really I consider that such a gift because you're so attuned to what's going on inside and outside. All you need is more breaks,
Mm-hmm.
maybe alone time, or the just right self-care practices, or talking to a friend, or a partner if, if they can provide that support. So all of that is what I bring, I think, more and more as I continue to practice this work.
Absolutely. It's such a incredible realization, and I can hear the, kind of reorganization from the inside out, that it's in the partnership practice that you start to receive that curious, interested, compassionate relationship of like, I'm deeply valuing what's emerging from you, which is not even stated, it's often just felt. And as a support for your embodied presence and experiencing the healing of that then has you value it all the more and bringing it into your work as something you offer to another person. And in that way, it's like we offer it to each other and then we offer it to our clients, and it becomes like deeply embedded and ingrained in what we do. And there's one of the beauties of it, I think, is that for me too, it is it's become an indispensable self-care practice that becomes the basis of how I offer what I offer and what it is that I offer.
Yeah, my elevator pitch for focusing or IRF or SIRF is the free therapy essentially for a lifetime you get after you take the course or part one and part two, and you find one partner or two that is the right nervous system, support for you, co-regulating, and especially for, again, those of us who have had undue influence in our early lives, or maybe we're recruited into a cult or high demand group, or coming out of a really intense workplace situation where we couldn't even take a lunch break or whatever, we got shamed and blamed. I find that, I'm just, I can't recommend it enough
Yeah,
because it's this priceless practice, and you can really reparent yourself with the support. You need the support of a co-regulating nervous system most of the time, and it takes such pressure off, again, the therapy or the therapist to do it, um, because it's happening. It just unfolds with the regular support of the peer-to-peer practice or the focusing oriented therapy.
absolutely. I think for a lot of us, it's the therapeutic relationship we always wanted. And I
Mhm.
know for me as well, like as I'm hearing you talk of like, oh, I've been through many, many years of therapy, which were really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And I was always looking for this. That's not quite it. What I'm not exactly sure, but there's something I'm looking for. And when I found both SE and honestly, really IRF, it was this is what I was looking for. This is the exquisitely attuned relationship to me and my needs that I was looking for. And as you're saying, of like, it's the support of the other person that allows it to emerge. But it's emerging from me. So that combination is so powerful. You can't do it, or I can't do it solely on my own. The other person provides something indispensable, but the exact thing that I'm so wanting emerges from me because I'm actually feeling it in my own body. I know exactly what it is, or I can get to exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's right. And it reminds me of systems theory again, where, like, particularly in a family system, this idea of homeostasis that we get from physics or science, where when one part of the system changes or one person in a family changes, the whole system is changed because it responds
Yeah,
by nature to get back to a homeostasis.
absolutely.
So, because of that, even just the focusing oriented therapist or the practice partner, IRF practice partner, being embodied and self in presence and being kind of empathically attuned, but from this place of feeling what's going on inside of them, that changes the, focuser or, the practicer, if you're in somatic experiencing, um, being in new relationship to themselves because there's this new space. And I find that inner critics really don't want to give up their space, right?
Yeah.
Especially because from childhood, I get this from object relations theory from my psychoanalytic training, that they're really entrenched for good reason because they've helped us survive circumstances that were too much, too big, overwhelming for our little bodies, minds, and beings, right? And so this idea that I get from Fairbairn, which is it's better to be a sinner in a world ruled by a god than live in a world ruled by the devil, meaning it's better to make yourself bad and wrong as a child. So there's the inner critic telling you, don't do that thing, because we need to idealize our parents in order to feel just basic safety in our bodies and to go through our days as children, right? So the mind is brilliant in that it has this survival strategy. And then we're all grown up. Here we are, adults in new environments and with a fully developed cortex. And we still have that voice inside of us, right? And through my understanding of attachment theory and this idea of object relations, where we needed to idealize then, and a part of us still idealizes our caregivers or the authorities at work or whoever it is, or even our therapist, right? That's normal. And they're scared. Like often, clients will be like, oh, I don't want to say this. I was like, it's okay. You can say it or not say it, but just notice there's something you maybe is scared about, what I might think about you or what you might experience. So just orienting people to that was good then. Now it's doesn't have bad intentions. In fact, it has like maybe even it wants good things for you. So positive intent. And it still doesn't feel good to make yourself bad and wrong. You are the devil, right? And they, whoever they are above you that you experience as in charge of you or having more power than you, is God. Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And just letting them be how they are, as long as they need to be worried, scared, telling us things or showing us scary things, makes perfect sense. They start to relax. And I found that was true for myself. And I think it's because, again, the power dynamic of then, doer and done to, shifts to mutuality now, sharing power
Mhm.
and accepting influence from the client if you're the focusing oriented therapist, or from your practice partner of the embodied, or excuse me, the empowered focuser knows best for themselves. So all that space, just things start relaxing over time and the inner critic gets a little quieter, little by little.
That is the opportunity for transformation of that system that it never actually worked. But like you said, feeling like the world is just, and so if something bad is happening, that's because I deserve it,
Right.
helps us feel safe, but not really. Like right? It's safe because you feel like you're in control. It's like, well, I can do better, and then the world's going to treat me better,
Right.
even though that's never actually been true. And that's the hard learning. But in this more mutual relationship where you're being given the opportunity to feel yourself as your definition rather than being told who you are, it feels so much more sturdy. Like, oh, I can feel that inside. That's how I know it's true. It just has a level of trustworthiness that all of the being told what's right or wrong or who you should be or who you are never had.
Right.
And so I think that the self-trust grows to, take the place of what was never really very sturdy to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find that coaching my clients, that it makes sense because their power dynamics in systems are real, in family systems or in,
Absolutely.
bigger systems, broader systems. I mean, just thinking about our country right now and how the power dynamic has shifted in a dramatic way.
Yeah.
All of our parts get activated because of that, and it might remind us of things from the past. So coaching my clients about you know, that part's feeling the power dynamic, and that makes sense. And it's, you know, really sensitive to that. And noticing what feels okay or good outside of you in your environment, like on your wall, or maybe the bottom of your feet don't feel tense. They're connected to the ground and they feel sturdy, they feel that support. Bringing those principles in along with the education of relational and system power dynamics can help, because sometimes I feel like clients need us to tell them, like, well, you feel this way for a reason. And what we're doing here is the medicine because we are having no demands and we're orienting to that part's scared. But right in the room that I'm in right now, nothing bad is happening.
Right. It's always orienting back to what you presently feel right now. It's not invalidating of your perceptions of what's happening out there. It's returning over and over again to the what's true right now that you are feeling in your body, because what you're feeling in your body is always right now. This is what's happening right now. And that return over and over again to the present moment really allows us to be more present. Even though I know, as you're saying, of like those critics and awarenesses are all there to protect us, and they're trying desperately to protect us, but they also have us leaving the present moment all the time, which is also no favor to us. So that when we get to have the encouragement of a therapist or a focusing partner of like, what's here right now? How are you experiencing that in your body right now? It returns us to goodness, to something that's like, oh, there's things that are feeling good as well as things that are not feeling so good. And it reminds us of our inherent nature that has goodness in addition to the scared and sad and struggling and unsafe and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's reminding me of Erickson's basic trust and mistrust, which is the
Mhm.
first developmental stage of children psychologically, which goes all the way back to my social works training. And that it takes so much time, right, to build trust and
Yes.
rebuild it within ourselves, even to be able to feel into the relative safety between therapist and client or peer to peer, just having another nervous system there. Sometimes when you have relational trauma or complex PTSD, that's really hard to feel into. And
Absolutely.
it feels like a threat or like an emergency that there's another nervous system there.
Yeah.
And so I just try to really normalize that that is going to be there and it takes as long as it takes. But I really, what supports me as a clinician in this work more and more is my just kind of just basic fundamental belief that the trust is there for our parts from ourself, right? Because we get ourselves. Even if one part doesn't get the other part, we in self and presence can let all of our disparate parts know they make sense from their perspective.
Mhm.
And that builds trust over time. And then I find people can slowly sense into the relative safety of the therapeutic relationship because they know that, again, no demand to feel 100% trusting of me. You can keep anything to yourself for as long as you want. In fact, you should keep some things to yourself. There's no agenda here or demand that you tell me all of your thoughts and feelings and sensations, only what you want to. And I think, again, that can be reparative over time. It can take a long time. I'm not gonna mince words. I'm not gonna, pretend it's like snap of your fingers, but little by little, it brings us back to ourself and that ability to trust, which little kids have, unless there are too many ruptures with no repair. Little kids trust.
Absolutely. And in part that trust is because like when we're in that like super sensory experience of infancy, we trust our senses and we trust our experiences, and that has us trusting ourselves.
Mhm.
And then through all the stuff we live through, we lose some of that trust of ourselves. We don't always trust that we're going to be able to take care of ourselves or going to be able to keep ourselves safe. And then, of course, then we don't trust other people. And it's like both things, it's bi-directional. Like when I can trust myself to keep myself safe in a situation, I can trust you more too, because I know that I'm going to keep me safe. I'm going to leave or assert myself or whatever if something happens that I'm uncomfortable with. But if I lost that trust of me to even know when to say no or when to leave, I can't trust you either. because I can't trust that I'm going to be safe in this situation. And I love IRF for its natural focus on, as I get to know me, I can start to trust me to know when I need to say no, when I need to leave. That's going to feel so clear from my body. And as I feel that, I also feel like, oh, I can trust you more too, because I know when to say no.
Right.
I know when to leave. And that it makes the inner world safer, which starts making the outer world feel safer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to ask you, is there any last thing that you want to say as we begin to wrap up?
I think I just want to leave people with some resources
Yeah.
that I found useful and some of my clients are finding useful. So for those who have, been in any way they feel like kind of a system where there was undue influence, you don't have to have been in a full-fledged cult, and some people might not identify that the religion or group or family system they were in was a particularly abusive.
Mm,
But there is one book that I recommend to anyone who feels like I've got something going on about that. And it's called Take Back Your Life. It's
mm.
a rather cheesy title, but it actually is very substantive. It
Uh-huh.
was written by a sociology professor named Yanya Lalich, Lalich. The book is in its third edition, and my mentor, Shelley Rosen, who's been in the cult recovery space for over 40 years, has a chapter in it for therapists. So anybody working with any clients that think, oh, I could use a little orienting of how to,
Yeah.
how I should be with people who are unfolding and trying to live forward after one of those intense experiences. I highly recommend her chapter in that book. And even just the idea, which the book is very good at communicating, which is that it's more normal than you think
Mm,
to
mm.
be in a relationship or a group or religion or family where there's undue influence or um, some like mind control or,
Yeah.
separating you from your body's needs. So that it's normalizing, it's destigmatizing because it educates readers about the situations that these high demand groups and religions look for, these circumstances that people are in, which are natural transitions in life, like
Mm,
going from home to college or coming out of a relationship or a marriage, right? Or changing jobs or moving to a new neighborhood or city or across the world or country. These groups and religions often prey or abusive people, right? They will prey on your vulnerability. And people who end up being drawn in and stay in these groups or religions for a really long time are usually very altruistic. And all of us are just looking for belonging. We need support. And so those systems offer that, and they do it through deception and betrayal. They don't tell you like all that you're
mhm.
going to have to give up to get that belonging. So, in a nutshell, that's why I recommend that
Yeah.
book to people. Also, the Untangling book, the new book by Ann Weiser Cornell and Barbara McGavin.
It's wonderful.
You can listen to it for free on Spotify. I don't know how long it's going to be there. It's only about 2 hours and change to listen to. And a couple of my clients who had big tangles, I've recommended it to them. And with enough education about why somatically informed parts work that we're using in the treatment with me, I find so effective. All the reasons are in that book and they're read by the authors. And, it's so pleasant to hear their voices, and they're
Good.
so honest and open about their own tangles.
Yeah.
I find those two resources to be the most useful that I want to offer to people, as well as looking for a support group.
Yeah.
If you've come out of a cult or high demand religion, um, especially people who were former members of your same group or religion, but even just the Al Anon, right? For people with extremely dysfunctional families in their early lives, that actually can be some free support. for people. And then I can't recommend focusing enough and taking your foundational classes at the least and getting a practice partner and having free therapy for life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for meeting with me and telling me about all of your wonderful work. It's really been great to hear about it.
Thank you for having me, Maureen.
Okay. Take care, Wendy.
You too. Bye now.